Hey everybody, Ron Burke, Editor-in-Chief for GamingTrend.com. Now, we were really impressed when we reviewed the Night series of chairs from eWin, and we wanted to try something just a little bit different. As it hits 107 degrees in Texas today, I wanted to take a look at a cloth chair and see what kind of difference that would make both in heat transfer and also comfortability. So, without further ado, let's open up this box and see what's inside. Now, it says not to cut it, but I'm not sure how else I'm supposed to get it. Harsh language? Chew at it? It's still got to get cut. We're just going to be a little more careful. Let's see if we can pry this open more than cut it open. eWin is the only chair manufacturer that includes gloves, so we're going to use them just for funsies. You want your chair to stay nice and clean, especially if you end up with grease on your fingers from one of these parts like this. So we'll follow their rules. We're gonna wear the gloves and look kind of nuts. All right, all gloved up. So the first thing I noticed is this is extraordinarily light. This cloth and aluminum frame is easy to move around and manipulate, and it's still really plushy. The stitching is double reinforced, just like their Night series. You can see there's that center stitch, and then there's a stitch on each side that helps ensure that everything stays right and tight. You have this kind of embroidered pattern here, and of course the eWin logo up top. First step that eWin suggests is to assemble the side of the chair, so we're going to pull these 4 screws. Now, I do wish that eWin would adopt something that other chair manufacturers have adopted, which is a side plate to help guide your chair together. On the side here we have this plate, and that's where the side rails on the seat are going to attach to. But a lot of manufacturers have started putting a plate on here where there's 2 little side rails and a top catch, so that plate slides into position and stops, and it allows you to at least have one side that's easy to assemble, and the other side you have to kind of finagle in place. But eWin has not done that for their chairs yet. Maybe we'll see that in their next generation of chairs. So I'm going to go ahead and get these bolts removed, and then we're going to get it attached to the rear of the chair, or the seat of the chair. Be right back. So the assembly instructions that they've included are actually for the Night that we reviewed last time. They use the same assembly instructions for all of their chairs. So the very first instruction suggests that you take these pillows and attach them to this chair before you even get started. Now, I'm not going to do that till the end because that seems kind of pointless and just one more thing to fall off while I'm manipulating the chair. So we're going to skip that. We unscrewed the 4 hex pins with the hex key, and it wants you to pre-mount the screws into the side covers. We'll get back to that when we actually assemble the side covers. And we're going to simply move on to the next step and get this back piece onto the bottom piece. As I said, this thing is remarkably light, so moving this around is really easy. So without that side key, you'd have to kind of position this in place and kind of hover it there. It's not too difficult, but it's just one of those things that would be just a little bit easier if they went with something like that plate that I was talking about earlier. So my suggestion is to start with the side that has the mechanical system to raise and lower the chair. Start with that side. The other side is really easy to move, so we'll start with the side that's not so easy to move. And you want to thread these in about halfway. You don't want to lock it down completely. So we'll get these in about halfway. Just like that. And then, yeah, these instructions, those can go away. Then we're going to do the other side. It's not difficult, and it certainly can be done with one person, which is one of the big things that I tend to look at. Whether or not you need help to assemble something as simple as a chair. You don't, because of how light this is. But as you can see, this was actually pretty easy, so I don't know, I may be making more about that little side plate than there needs to be. Alright, I've got all 4 in place, so we're gonna grab the right Allen wrench and lock these in. All of the needed equipment comes on a little blister pack card right here. And I want to point out something that's kind of great. So in here you have a set of spare parts. If you've ever had one of these parts come out, one of these bolts or one of the bolts underneath, and you take this to the hardware store to try and replace it, you can just hang it up. You might as well try and get in touch with eWin or somebody else and try and get a replacement bolt, because places like the Home Depot, despite having a million tools, don't seem to have the right screws and bolts for these kind of chairs. I have tried multiple times from multiple manufacturers. It's not any one manufacturer over the other that has this problem, but it is certainly a pain. So try not to lose the screws, and make sure you hold on to that bag of spare parts. It's great of eWin to include those, and I appreciate it. Headed back to the side here, we're going to be placing these side covers on. Now there are 2 different side covers, but you can see one has kind of a space on it and the other one is flat. So the flat one is going to go on the non-mechanical side, so that's this side here. If this is the left side of the chair here, then the left side is the flat one. And that's because there's no mechanical part for the mechanism to actuate the chair on that side. So we're going to drop in this little hex head bolt, grab the other Allen key. I'm not sure why they didn't use the same size, but that's fine. This is another area where some folks are starting to move away from these kind of screws and they're moving towards magnets. Jury's out whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Here we're still working with bolts, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to lock this in like so. With that done, we'll grab the cap. You can see there's already 2 holes for this, so just kind of squeeze it into place. All set. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side, and we'll be right back. These armrests are called 4D armrests, and that's because they can go 4 directions. So you obviously have up and down. That'll fit for whatever height. Then there's a button on the inside here that lets you move them forward and back. So you can find the placement that's right for you and let it lock in. Then there's a second button on the inside here that lets you move side to side, laterally. So the last is this. You can pivot them in and out. Now I've seen this particular style of 4D armrest on a lot of different chairs, so this might be what you could consider a commodity armrest. But I have seen it done better. You can see that this is very stiff, especially in and out. And that's because you're running plastic pieces on top of plastic pieces. Some manufacturers are starting to move towards a more sophisticated metal plate system, and those are very smooth for their actuation. Even now, I'm really struggling to move that. So that's something that could be improved on future chairs. Now, thankfully, you're not manipulating this very often. So once you get it in position, you're probably done, especially if you're the only user of this chair, but it's still something to keep in mind. Heading underneath the chair, we have a solid steel frame. I believe that's steel, not aluminum. And these arm plates are also steel. You have 4 adhesion points, as well as 2 here on the inside. I've seen this attached with 1 in the past, but these use 2. These should stay put. I have certainly had some chairs in the past that would become loose after a while. You'd have problems with this particular piece moving. This should stay locked in, and those are the ones that they sent you spares of. So if one of these does happen to come out, you do have spares, but they do use lock washers, so they should stay put. These 4 screws are gonna come out. This is where we're gonna mount that tilt plate. But I do wanna point out while I'm in here, you also have these 2 bands. So these bands are your tensioner bands. They do hold everything together, so these should stay right and tight. It's a good solid, feels like a kind of a neoprene material, so this should stay solid for some years to come. We'll talk about warranty in just a minute though. There are certain parts that you might consider commodity, and these tilt plates are one of them. I've seen a particular design similar to this on multiple chairs, but here's the good news. This is the most robust of them all. This particular tilt mechanism where you have this kind of socket joint here and a closed system with a tensioner. This is the heavy one. This is the one that's gonna hold up for years, and it's really only seen on the most high end of chairs. Ewin uses this pretty much exclusively, or at least every chair that I've checked out. So I know that this is gonna hold up for years because I have several years old chairs that are still working absolutely perfectly. So good on them. One thing that's different is theirs comes pre-assembled. You don't have to put the arms on. Some other manufacturers have these where you can remove them, but here it's all boxed up and just has some styrofoam to keep things safe. So let's mount this up. Headed over here, we've already removed the 4 bolts. This does have an indicator on it that tells me that this is the front of the chair, which obviously that's the front. So we're gonna drop in these first 2 screws, and we're only gonna thread them again about halfway because we're probably gonna have to move this a little bit to get it to lock into place on the bottom screws, especially with weight on it. The last bit of assembly is getting these casters and this gas cylinder into this star base. Now this star base in this case is made of a lightweight aluminum. I have seen them made of steel, and man, those chairs are heavy. But this is where all of your weight is distributed. Most chairs fall into 2 different categories. You have large and you have extra large. Large is typically somewhere, around 250 pounds, and extra large I've seen go as high as 550 pounds. But picking your chair is not just about picking the weight. That's important for sure, because you don't want to overwhelm the gas cylinder. This is a class 4 gas cylinder, so it has a certain amount of weight that it's going to be able to raise and lower. So pick the right chair for the job. But it's also important to make sure that it's the right height and body configuration. So when you look at the chair, it does have like those little wings, right? Those are not just for decoration. Those are meant to kind of cradle your body so you sit comfortably. If you pick too large of a chair, you're going to be shifting in your chair a lot, and it doesn't really cradle your body. So on long periods of play, you're really going to feel that. So just be mindful of that when you pick a chair. Pick a chair that's built for you. So back onto this. This is a little bit different. This one supports 330 pounds. So it's kind of right in the middle of those 2 numbers. So if you're like, man, I don't know, I weigh just a little bit more than 250 or something like that, this actually fits just fine. So you don't have to worry about that. 330 pounds, right in the middle. So you've heard me rail against casters in the past. Almost every chair review, I seem to focus on these things because they're terrible. Well, Ewin heard me, and they have designed a new caster. So I don't know how well these are gonna work, but they are kind of futuristic looking. They're very Tron-like, I guess, because there's nothing in the middle. So we'll see how well this fares. I still see the propensity for getting carpet fiber in between here. I still may end up using a single caster wheel. I tend to replace them with like a roller skate type wheel. I'm gonna leave that in the description anyway, just so you have them. So if you don't like this particular caster style, there are other caster styles. This is a standard post, so there are options. Especially if you have hardwood floors, maybe you don't like this type, maybe you want like a rubberized wheel instead of a plastic wheel. So we'll test them out and see how it goes, but for now, let's get them in place. Next is the gas cylinder. I mentioned that this is a standard class 4 gas cylinder. You can pick up replacements on Amazon fairly cheaply, so if your gas cylinder dies, rest assured this is a commodity part. This can easily be swapped. it doesn't get any simpler than this. Put the knobby part into the hole. Drop it in place, done. Now a word about gas cylinders. You can replace these with larger gas cylinders, taller gas cylinders. Maybe you want your chair to lift a little higher. Be very mindful. These are balanced for the cylinder that they come with. So if you were to change this to a higher gas cylinder, you may change the center of balance. And that's gonna result in videos that I need to see, because this will dump you on your butt and I will definitely need to see it. So let's go ahead and press this in there and make sure it stays. We'll put the two pieces together and see how it looks all assembled. There is one last piece of information that I want to impart to you before I actually put my tail in this chair and try it out for a couple of days, and that's the warranty. If you've watched my videos before, you know that warranty is a big thing for me. I want companies to stand behind their products, and I want those products to last for a long time, especially if they're more expensive. So with this chair, it has a kind of staggered warranty, if you will. What I mean by that is what you see here, right out of the gate, you buy it, it has 2-year warranty. If you register it, that extends that warranty out to 3 years. If you take a picture of it and upload it to any social media platform and tag the eWin team, they automatically upgrade that to 5 years. Now the frame itself, everything that you see underneath, well, everything you can't see underneath all of this, has a 10-year warranty right out of the gate. So they do stand behind their products, but you're gonna have to do just the tiniest bit of work to make sure that you get the maximum warranty. So now that it's all assembled, I'm gonna put my butt in it for a few days, and I'll get back to you in just a second, and we'll wrap up with my final thoughts. Welcome back. Thanks to COVID, I've had a lot more time sitting in this chair and locked in my office than I anticipated I would. So I've had a lot more time with the eWin Championship Series than I thought I was gonna end up having. I did notice one major difference though. If you look behind me, you can see I've got a lot of bases for comparison, but they all have one thing in common. They're all very much gamer chairs. If you have a spouse or a loved one that says, keep your gaming crap downstairs and out of my living room, well, these are not gonna work. Even this eWin Night Series, it's one of my absolute favorite chairs. It's extraordinarily comfortable and very sturdy. It's not gonna blend in. Whereas this eWin Championship Series is gonna look good in any environment. This could slide underneath a desk that has no gaming gear in it, and it's gonna look the part. Better still, it's 110 in Texas these days. It's miserable. If you don't keep your house cool, these PU leather chairs, super comfortable, but also very warm. This cloth is very breathable, and on those days when it is so miserable hot, this still remains comfortable. Now there are some other differences that I've noticed between them. Now this particular chair from eWin, this is actually an extra large chair, so there's a lot more padding in this chair than you'll find here. This is more of a large chair, so the padding is not necessarily as large, but you may not actually need that. Unless you're a bigger or taller person, that's probably overkill for what you need. Now the other major difference is the tilt mechanism on this chair versus this chair. This has a more heavy duty tilt mechanism than this one, but not by much. So these are very similarly priced. They're both $359. You can catch them on sale. I've seen them as low as $299 already. So be mindful of that when you're shopping. There's probably some Black Friday deals coming up in Q4 that you should keep an eye out for, but this would make a fantastic gift underneath the tree if you're planning ahead. So there's a lot of things to recommend with the Championship Series. If you're looking for something that can blend into your house environment without looking like a gaming chair, but also retain a lot of the same things that make a chair like this one great, it's hard to go wrong. I'm Ron Burke, editor-in-chief for GamingTrend.com. I hope you got something useful out of this, and we'll see you again very soon.